All the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So Jesus told them this parable. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the young son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him, but he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'"
The parable of the prodigal son gives us a deeply moving image of God's forgiveness. While the son was still a long way off, Jesus says, the father runs to embrace his wayward child and welcome him home. But the story is really about 2 estranged children. One obviously disrespects his father by running away and wasting his inheritance on selfish pleasures. But the other also dishonors his father by rejecting his love in favor of a transactional arrangement, one where he feels entitled to be rewarded for his obedience. Ultimately, he is just as distant from his father as his runaway brother was in the far country. Jesus tells this story in direct response to the morally upright Pharisees, who were grumbling that he welcomed sinners and ate with them. In effect, he was addressing a group of older brothers. So what did he want them to hear? Well, it's important to note the parable is actually the third of 3 stories Jesus told about lost things. The first was about a lost sheep, the second a lost coin, and finally this one about a lost son. Pastor and author Tim Keller points out in the first 2 stories, someone goes and searches for what was lost. But in this parable, no one goes looking for the younger son. So who should have? One obvious answer is the older brother. In Jesus, we have an older brother who, unlike the one in the story, has come looking for us. And in doing so, he has modeled for us the kind of brothers and sisters we should be to each other.
One of the hardest things in the world is to stop being the prodigal son without turning into the elder brother. It is for us to begin. If we take one step towards the Lord, He takes 10 towards us. I am the prodigal son every time I search for unconditional love where it cannot be found. Every parent is at some time the father of the unreturned prodigal, with nothing to do but keep his house open to hope.
A parable will mean something different depending on the character you most identify with in the story. At the moment, do you identify more with the younger brother, the older brother, or the father? Why? Has there been a far country in your life? If so, do you feel like you are spiritually at home now? When you think about your relationship with God, does it feel more like a joyful celebration or an unrewarded duty? Talk to God about the younger brothers and sisters He has placed in your life, and ask to be shown what you might do for them.